come home. There's a black car outside.
Please forgive me. I am here. I might save my family, but if I walk away, I will know I left someone to die. If this story touched your heart, please support us. Please like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Thank you. Please support us. Thank you for being part of this journey. Vera? No, this can't be true.
3 years after I buried a man who promised me forever, in the same week his daughter learned to call me Mama. I found an unconscious stranger bleeding inside an overturned car on the coldest night the harbor had seen in 11 years. I had no idea that the man whose crushed windpipe I was about to protect was Declan Ashford. The most dangerous name whispered in any room where money quietly changed hands. Or that keeping his voice alive would give me the first real family I had ever been allowed to keep. My name is Marin Holloway. I had been working as a trauma nurse at St. Adrian's for 4 years. And that night, I was already almost 2 hours late getting home. The hearing aid in my left ear whistled as the staff door clicked shut behind me. I tucked it back beneath the loose knot of hair at my neck and crossed the emptying parking lot. Gripping a small insulated bag in one hand and setting a paper pharmacy box in the other. The first frost wind came in sideways off the harbor. My feet burned after a 16-hour shift. A smear of dried blood darkened one sleeve of my pale blue scrubs. The battery in my right hearing aid had died sometime before 2 in the morning. I should have felt relief leaving the building. But the conversation I had overheard at the nurse's station followed me across the icy pavement. She gets the difficult assignments because we have to prove we are fair. The woman who said it had been standing 3 feet to my left. She believed I had not heard her because my face was turned toward the supply cabinet. People often made that mistake. I was profoundly deaf in my left ear and partially deaf in my right. Some sounds reached me whole. Others arrived broken, distant, a fraction late. If someone spoke while facing away from me, I sometimes had to reconstruct a sentence from the shape of their shoulders or ask them to repeat themselves. Cruel words, however, always seemed to find a way through. Less than an hour earlier, the same coworker had nearly missed an elderly man's internal bleeding after a routine valve replacement. His blood pressure had dropped, and everyone assumed weakness. I watched the color leave his nail beds as I changed the 4th bag. His pulse thinned beneath my fingers. His belly had stiffened on the right. I asked for the senior attending. My coworker rolled her eyes and said I was creating panic over a tired man. I asked again when she ignored me. I walked into the corridor and found Dr. Penn myself. The scan showed nearly a liter of blood pooling inside the man's abdomen. He was in the OR within 7 minutes before I left the unit, Doctor. Penn stood in front of the team and said, "Marin may ask you to repeat yourself." But she notices what most people miss the first time. That patient is alive because she paid attention. I should have felt proud instead. I watched the room not meet my eyes. One person gave me a careful smile. Another looked down. The coworker who had dismissed me folded her arms and waited until Dr. Penn walked away before whispering that I enjoyed making everyone else look incompetent. I pretended I had not heard. I had become very good at pretending. I pretended not to notice when people spoke behind my back. I pretended not to notice when they exaggerated their lips at me as if I were a child. I pretended it did not cut when someone called me inspiring in the same voice they used for a patient learning to walk again. I did not want pity. I wanted people to face me when they spoke and judge my work by the standard they used for everyone else. I reached my car and set the pharmacy box carefully on the passenger seat. It held a single vial of an experimental drug that the oncology team had agreed to try on my Aunt Vera. She had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And her oncologist had called me twice this week to say there was one window, if we missed it. We were done. My feet were freezing. My fingers were stiff. The bag in my hand held a thermos of soup I had cooked at 4 in the morning because I knew Vera would not eat the cafeteria food. The things at home had been wrong for weeks. My aunt had started taking calls in the garden at night, so I could not read her lips through the kitchen window. She checked the front walk before opening the door, even when she knew it was only me. She stopped her sentences whenever I walked into a room, each time I asked what was happening. She kissed my forehead and said, "Sweetheart, do not worry about old women." She had worked for Cassius Merrick Holdings for 19 years. She ran the personnel files for the medical clinics the company quietly owned along the harbor. She rarely discussed her work, but the company name appeared on every paycheck, holiday card, and dental plan that came into our house. Even mentioning Cassius Merrick lately made her fingertips shake. I had chased down the experimental drug because I wanted one quiet night with the children. June, my late fiancée Eli's 7-year-old daughter, who had been 4 months old when her mother died in childbirth and who had been 3 when her father died at sea. Theo, my 16-year-old cousin, whose parents had been taken by ICE 2 years ago during a raid at the bakery his mother had built. I wanted the 4 of us to sit around the kitchen table at the same time and not argue about anything. I wanted to bring something strong into the house, in case the bitterness had plans of its own. My phone vibrated before I touched the driver's door handle. June's name appeared on the screen. I pressed the phone against my better ear. "Baby girl, why are you still awake?" For several seconds I heard only her breath. "Auntie Marin," her voice wobbled. "Grandma Vera is crying again." My hand froze on the handle. "Why is she crying?" "I don't know, there's a big black car across the street." Theo told me to stay away from the window. The wind lost all sound around me. "Where is your brother?" "In his socks. He said he was waiting." "What do you mean waiting?" "He packed a bag. He put both suitcases by the front door." I stared through the windshield at the pharmacy box. "I'm coming home. That's not what I asked." My girl had inherited my habit of noticing the answer people avoided. "I do not know what is happening," I admitted. "But I am coming as fast as the roads will let me." "Auntie Marin, yes, are you leaving too?" The question hit a place inside me that had never fully healed. My own mother had made a similar promise before I turned 4. Had told me that she would only be gone for an hour to get milk. Had walked out of our apartment with one small suitcase and never returned. I learned later she had been 19 and overwhelmed and unable to keep a deaf daughter in a hearing world. The state had failed me into Vera's hands before my 5th birthday. "No," I said into the phone. "I am coming home to you and Theo, promise, I promise." I ended the call and started the engine. Snow had begun mixing again with the sleet, coating the windshield faster than my wipers could clear it. I called Vera 4 times. She did not answer. Her phone went to voicemail on the second ring, then stopped ringing altogether. The fastest route home ran beside the old harbor, down a stretch of road I avoided after dark because the streetlights were unreliable and the abandoned warehouses had fallen into the hands of men I did not know. June's afraid voice stole the option of caution. I drove with both hands tight around the wheel, replaying her words: black car, 2 suitcases. Theo in his socks, waiting. I was less than 15 minutes from home when my headlights caught something darker than the storm. At first, I thought a shipping container had slid off a flatbed and rolled onto the shoulder of the road. Then I saw a tire rotating slowly in the slush. A large black car had left the pavement, clipped the concrete divider, and rolled at least once onto its passenger side. Steam rose from the crumpled hood. One headlight flickered weakly against the wet pavement. Shattered glass glittered like small coins across the slush. I slammed on the brakes. The pharmacy box slid into the passenger door. For one long second I did not move. June was waiting. Vera might have already gone. Theo was frightened and believed everyone was leaving him. I needed to keep driving. Then I saw a man's hand hanging motionless through the shattered driver's window. I had spent almost 4 years helping strangers survive the worst moments of their lives. I could not leave a man to die simply because mine was falling apart. I grabbed my medical kit, stepped into the freezing slush, and ran toward the wreck. "Can you hear me?" I called as I crouched beside the driver's side. The man inside was unconscious. Blood ran from a gash near his temple and disappeared into his dark hair. His black wool coat had twisted beneath the seatbelt. One shoulder was pinned at an unnatural angle. The crushed roof had folded close to his neck. I reached carefully through the broken window and pressed 2 fingers against his throat. His pulse was weak, fast, uneven. His breathing came in shallow pain. "Sir, my name is Marin. I am medically trained. I need you to stay still." His eyelids flickered for less than a second. His eyes opened. They were dark and unfocused. But something in them stayed sharp. He tried to speak, only a broken breath escaped. "Do not force your voice. You may have injured your cervical spine." His hand found my wrist. The grip was weak but deliberate. He looked past me toward the empty road and tried to form a word. I leaned closer to read his lips. "No police." I was not certain I had understood him. His hand tightened once before slipping away. "You were in a serious accident," I told him. "You do not get to choose what kind of help you need." My call to 911 failed twice before it finally connected. I gave the location. The dispatcher warned me that the weather had slowed every ambulance on the south side of the city. I rolled clean towels from my kit and placed them on either side of the man's neck. To keep it aligned, I tucked gauze against the bleeding near his temple. The seat belt had left a savage mark across his throat and the upper part of his chest. His shoulder was most likely dislocated. The uneven rise of his ribs told me at least one was broken. I kept talking even after he slipped back into unconsciousness. "You are not allowed to die tonight. June already believes everyone leaves. I will not let a stranger prove her right." The car smelled of fuel, slush, and hot metal. I watched the buckled hood for smoke and rechecked his pulse every few seconds. Headlights appeared behind me before any public ambulance did. 2 matte black vehicles stopped in the road. Several men stepped out. They moved too deliberately to be paramedics, too quietly to be police. The man in front wore a dark wool coat and the kind of expression that made people obey before he raised his voice. "Step away from the car," he ordered. I remained beside the injured man. "Are you medically trained, Move?" "Not until someone supports his head." His eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" "The person keeping him from choking on his own blood. If you drag him out without a cervical collar, you can paralyze him." Another man stepped forward carrying a professional trauma case. The first man studied the bandage around the stranger's head and the improvised support I had tucked along his neck. "What happened?" he asked. "The car rolled at least once. He has a head wound. Possible shoulder dislocation, multiple rib fractures. And swelling around the larynx. His pulse is unstable. He needs imaging immediately." Did he speak? He tried. No real sound came out. His hand signaled to me. But I am the only one who could see his mouth. The man crouched and looked through the broken driver's window. Declan, the name meant nothing to me. The injured man did not respond. "We have to move him," the man said, then listened to me carefully. I showed them where to place their hands, how to keep the head aligned with the spine, how to slide the board without twisting the shoulder. The man with the trauma case followed every instruction. The first man clearly disliked being told what to do, but he did not interrupt again. A private ambulance arrived 2 minutes later. It had no markings and no siren. The doors opened and a medical team stepped out with a rigid collar, a spinal board, oxygen, and a monitor. Once the injured man was secured, I gave them a quick report. He was unconscious when I arrived. He opened his eyes once and attempted to speak. His pulse remained fast and irregular. The swelling around his throat increased while I was here. Do not assume the voice loss is only shock. The man in the dark coat turned toward me. "Your name, Marin, last name. Why? Because you treated him," he said. "I treated a stranger on the side of a road. That does not give you access to my personal information." "He studied me, Eli Wells," he offered. He gave his own name as if it should make me trust him. It did not. "I work at St. Adrian's." I told him, "That is enough for any medical report." His eyes dropped briefly to the hospital logo on my jacket. "You should wait. My daughter is awake. So is my cousin. The roads are dangerous. So is leaving him in the slush." He glanced at the closed ambulance doors. "If what you did bought him enough time, then stop talking to me and use it." I turned before he could respond. My hand shook so badly that it took 2 attempts to put the car in drive. As I pulled away, I checked the mirror once. Eli stood in the road watching me. The private ambulance disappeared in the opposite direction, followed by both black vehicles. I reached home 14 minutes later. The pharmacy box had bent on one side, but the vial inside was unbroken. I carried it inside anyway. The porch light was on. The front door was unlocked. The house was so quiet I could hear the faint electrical hum of the refrigerator through my one working hearing aid. June, she came running from the living room wearing one sock, one pajama sleeve, and the expression of a child who had been waiting in the dark. I dropped my bag and caught her. Auntie Marin. She buried her face against my coat. Where are they? I asked. Theo stood at the kitchen doorway. He was fully dressed. His school backpack rested against his ankle. He looked older than he had that morning. They left, he said. When? Before June called you. Why did no one call me? Grandma told me to wait until they were gone. She said if you knew, you would try to follow them. The anger came through the fear like a hand through a curtain. Where did they go? He shook his head. They wouldn't tell me. I looked around the room. Vera's winter coat was gone. Her purse was missing from its hook. 2 framed photographs had been taken off the mantel. On the kitchen table sat a cream envelope with my name written across the front in my aunt's careful handwriting. For the second time in my life, someone I loved had left me through paper. The first had been a man. The second was the woman who had taken his place. I opened the envelope under the same kitchen light where I had read the first one 6 years earlier. Marin, by the time you read this, we will be gone. Your aunt and I have spent our lives taking care of everyone else. And we have decided to begin again somewhere new. You are 27 years old. You know how to manage this house. You know how to manage June, you know how to manage Theo. We have signed temporary guardianship papers so that there will be no problem with his school, his medical care, or his immigration review. Do not search for us, do not call our old numbers. They will be disconnected. Do not try to find us. We need a life that belongs to us. You are strong. You will manage. Vera's handwriting stayed as careful as always. Except in the final 3 words, you will manage slanted downward. The way a person's handwriting slants when they are writing too fast. Eli had written almost the same sentence on his own farewell note. You have always been stronger than me. You will be fine without me. He had packed a bag while I worked a hospital shift. He had signed the guardianship papers for June, written a single line of goodbye, and walked down to a harbor boat that would not come back. The note said he was tired of bills, of children, of hospitals, of constant adjustment around my hearing. He said he wanted space. I had spent 6 years wondering whether a hearing woman would have been easier to love. Now my aunt had used my strength to justify leaving a teenager behind. What does it say? Theo asked. I folded the note before he could read it. They are going away for a while, because of me, no. Vera said you would know what to do with me. That does not mean you did anything wrong. She said, on the phone last week, that I had become difficult. Theo, look at me. He raised his dark eyes. She didn't mean that. You did not hear her say it. I did not say I didn't hear her. I am saying it was not the truth of who you are. His chin trembled. I don't know what to believe anymore. I crouched in front of him. You never have to apologize for the things I do not hear about you. The things that hurt will be the things people say when there is no one watching. The things that matter are the things they say when they are looking at you fully. He looked down. I'm sorry anyway, you don't have to be. The June wind outside had risen again. The black box of the pharmacy vial sat on the counter where I had left it. I had carried an experimental drug through wind and broken glass because I thought my family would still be waiting. Now the person I had cooked soup for at 4 in the morning was gone. Listen to me, I told both children, pulling them close against my chest. You are staying with me. No one is sending either of you anywhere. We will figure out what happened together. Are you angry at them? Theo asked. Yes. Do you still love them? Yes. Can you do both? I looked down at the note in my hand apparently. June refused to sleep unless I left the hallway light on. Theo lay on top of his blanket, fully dressed, shoes still on. When I asked him to take them off, he said he was comfortable. I understood. He wanted to be ready in case anyone else disappeared while he slept. I did not make him take off his shoes. After the children were quiet, I locked myself in the bathroom. I sat on the floor beside the bathtub. I pressed both hands over my mouth and cried as quietly as I could. Eli had left because he thought my life demanded too much of him. My aunt had left because she thought I could carry more. Different reasons, the same empty room. I looked at my reflection and whispered, "Why does everyone use my strength as permission to leave me?" No one answered. One hearing aid had stopped working. The slush from the wreck soaked the knees of my scrubs. My face was swollen, so I did what everyone expected. I washed my face and started managing. The guardianship papers were properly signed and notarized. Vera had prepaid June's school fees for a year. A folder contained all of Theo's medical records, his immigration paperwork, his college application drafts, and his emergency contacts. In the refrigerator, I found containers of soup, lentil stew, bread, marked macaroni. Each one had a date and reheating instructions in Vera's handwriting. The top shelf held June's favorite pasta. The bottom held the vegetable curry Theo had always claimed to hate but finished every time. In the hall cabinet, I found a 6-month supply of hearing aid batteries. I usually bought one box at a time because they were expensive. Vera had left enough for half a year. People who were tired of responsibility did not usually organize school records and label dinners before running away. The thought came quietly. I was too hurt to trust it. Maybe guilt made people careful. Maybe she wanted freedom without leaving complete destruction behind. I went into Vera's bedroom. Her wedding ring sat in the top drawer beside a folded handkerchief. She had worn that ring for 19 years. She wore it while cooking, while gardening, while reading June bedtime stories. She would never leave it behind on purpose. I slipped the ring into my coat. My hands were shaking. Fear moved through me. Pushing some of the anger aside, I called both their phones from my own phone. The numbers were already disconnected. I called the police and explained that my aunt and her husband had gone missing. The officer asked whether there was a note. When I said yes, he told me that adults were allowed to leave voluntarily. I mentioned the crying, the strange black car Theo had seen, the ring in the drawer, the children. He agreed to take a report, but warned me that the farewell note made the situation legally unclear. "They will contact you when they are ready," he said. I wanted to ask how long children were expected to wait for adults to become ready to love them again. Instead, I thanked him and ended the call. I stayed awake until morning. At 7, I called June's school. At 7:15, Theo's. At 8, I called my supervisor at St. Adrian's and told him I would be late. He told me the department was short-staffed. He asked whether the emergency could wait until after my shift. I almost laughed. At 9, June ate cereal at the kitchen table. Theo pretended to read a comic book. I arranged for an older neighbor, Mrs. Patel, to watch them. Before I left, I knelt in front of Theo. "I will be home by 6. People keep saying they will come back." He said, "Look at me." He raised his eyes. "I am going to work. I will call if I am delayed. I will not vanish." What if something happens to you? The overturned car flashed through my mind. Then I will still find a way to call. He nodded. He kept his shoes on. St. Adrian's looked exactly the same as it had the night before. Machines beeped, phones rang, nurses pushed carts down the hallway. My family had fallen apart, but the hospital had not noticed. The coworker from the nurses' station looked at my face. "Rough night," she said. "You could say that. We covered your first 2 hours. Thank you." She seemed disappointed that I had not argued. The senior doctor called me into the corridor. He stood directly in front of me as he always did. "The patient from last night is stable," he said. The scan confirmed 3 broken ribs, a dislocated shoulder, and a fracture near his larynx. The surgeon confirmed he would not have survived another 40 minutes without intervention. I only noticed the signs. That is what good medical professionals do. He studied me. "Are you all right?" The question was so simple that it almost came undone in my chest. "A family situation. Do you need time off?" "I need the paycheck." His expression softened. Speak to me if the schedule becomes impossible. Behind him, my coworker rolled her eyes. I saw it, he did not. Thank you, I said. Near the end of my shift, the front desk told me a man named Eli Wells was waiting in the administrative office. I knew the name. He stood when I entered. His coat was dry this time, and his expression remained as guarded as it had been beside the overturned car. Is he alive? I asked. Yes. Relief came before I could stop it. Can he speak? No. Eli placed a card on the desk between us. The card carried the name Ashford Private Medical. The damage to the nerve near his vocal cords was significant. Eli said, "The doctors do not know whether the loss is temporary." I warned the team about the swelling. That warning may have prevented more permanent damage. He answered, "Then why are you here?" He asked for you. I looked at him. He was unconscious. I told him what you did. So did the doctors. What does he want? He wrote that he wanted to meet you once. Why? He did not explain. Men like him usually expect people to come when they are asked. Eli did not deny it. You know who he is now. I had looked up the name Ashford in the break room between charts. Declan Ashford's name appeared in business pages, charity photographs, and stories people told quietly. He owned the harbor's largest shipping line, 3 of the city's most exclusive restaurants, and a security firm that staffed the private clinics where wealthy families paid for discretion. He had never been convicted of anything serious. Everyone knew what kind of power lived behind his legitimate businesses. I stopped because he was injured, I said. I do not want money or involvement in his life. Tell him yourself. I looked at the card. One meeting. The Ashford Private Medical occupied the top floors of a quiet building with no public signage. There were no reporters outside and no patients wandering the halls. Security checked my identification twice. Eli met me by the elevator and led me into a private recovery suite. Declan Ashford lay propped against white pillows without the blood covering his face. He looked different from the man in the wreck. His dark hair had been cut away from the wound near his temple. Bruising spread along his throat and disappeared beneath the collar of his gown. One shoulder remained immobilized. His eyes followed me as I entered, alert, controlled. He looked like a man accustomed to using a few quiet words to change an entire room. A whiteboard rested on the tray beside him. He wrote slowly with his uninjured hand and turned it toward me. Eli told me, "You saved my life. I did what any trained person should have done." Declan looked at the words, erased them, and wrote again. 3 cars passed before you stopped. I glanced toward Eli. The traffic camera caught each one. I looked back at Declan. Then those 3 people forgot how to be human. I could not leave a dying man on the side of a road. You did not know who I was. I did not need to know who you were in that moment. You were not powerful. You were not dangerous. You were an injured man who needed medical care. His gaze remained on my face. Then he wrote, "What do you want in return?" "Nothing." He watched me for several seconds. "Humanity is not a favor that should come with a bill." I did not stop because I expected anything from you. Declan read my lips carefully and looked down at the board without writing. For the first time since I entered the room, he seemed uncertain. A doctor entered and began speaking to Eli about Declan's condition. The damage to the nerve near his vocal cords remained significant. We will continue with rehabilitation. But I want to prepare you for the possibility that his full speech will not return. Declan's jaw tightened. He raised his hand. The doctor continued looking at Eli. We should also talk about discharge planning. He cannot return to work for several months. Declan tapped his marker against the board. Eli glanced over. He wants to ask you something. Declan's expression darkened. His lips moved without sound. Lower the dose, I said. He does not want to leave the facility. He wants the pain medication reduced. It makes him feel unclear. Both men looked at me. Declan pointed toward me once. The doctor finally turned toward him. Is that correct? Declan nodded. Eli frowned. How did you understand that? I read his lips. The doctor looked uncomfortable. We can lower the dose. But the pain will increase, Declan wrote. I prefer pain to confusion. Then we will adjust it, the doctor said. After he left, Eli said, He is asking to leave earlier. Declan wrote something and showed it to him. Earlier is not now. Eli exhaled sharply. You see the difficulty. The difficulty is that everyone in this room keeps deciding what he means before asking him. I said. Eli's eyes narrowed. We have known him for years. Then you should know enough to confirm what he actually said. Declan's mouth moved slightly. It might have been the beginning of a smile. He wrote, "Stay for the next medical meeting." I am asking, not ordering. I studied him one meeting. He added. He nodded. During that meeting, every person in the room tried to speak through me each time I tried to make them stop. Ask him directly, I said. He lost his voice, not his mind. When Declan wrote an answer, I read only the exact words. I did not soften his tone. I did not add explanations. If someone turned away while speaking to him, I asked them to face both of us at the end. The facility administrator asked whether Declan wanted me present during future consultations. Declan wrote yes. The administrator later contacted St. Adrian's and asked whether I would work a small number of hours each week as a communication consultant during Declan's rehabilitation. I would remain a St. Adrian's employee. Ashford Private would reimburse the hospital for my time. I would not become Declan's personal nurse, live in his home, or enter any part of his business. My job is to help him communicate, I told the administrator. I will not make decisions for him. That, she answered softly, is exactly why he requested you. The extra pay would cover June's school transportation and the after-school childcare I now needed. I hated that money made the choice easier, but responsibility did not disappear because pride wanted it to. I agreed. For the next 2 weeks, my life was cut into pieces I could barely hold. I worked trauma shifts in the morning, crossed the city for Declan's consultations in the afternoon, and returned home to June's homework, Theo's silence, frozen dinners, and unanswered calls to my aunt. I slept badly. I woke whenever the house creaked. Theo continued sleeping in his shoes. June began drawing pictures of all 4 of us holding hands. Vera was never included. Declan noticed that I arrived tired. He did not ask questions immediately. Our first written conversation stayed short. You are 7 minutes late today, he wrote. I took the marker from him and wrote beneath his sentence. You are alive. Be grateful. He raised one eyebrow. The next day he refused an anti-nausea medication because it made him sleepy. You were easier to manage unconscious, I wrote, he replied. You were less argumentative when I was unconscious. I wrote, that was only because you could not write back. A rare smile appeared and vanished before I was sure I had seen it. He started preparing questions. Before I arrived, how many patients today? What did the elderly man need? Why did I check the doorway before sitting down? I answered the first 2 and ignored the third. Declan erased the third without pressing me. That restraint made me more aware of him. Eli had demanded immediate answers whenever silence made him uncomfortable. Declan let silence remain. He also noticed the way the staff spoke to me. The first time a nurse delivered instructions while facing a cabinet, Declan tapped the bed rail until she turned around. When the nurse looked confused, he pointed toward me and then toward his eyes. Face her, the nurse apologized. He never praised himself for the gesture. He simply did it again the next time. Eli had used to ask me, do I really have to stand in front of you every single time I want to speak to you? He had treated a basic accommodation like an unfair tax on his shoulders. Declan adjusted without being asked. One afternoon, he saw me tense when the social worker handed him a written note from his own family. He waited until the social worker left. Then he wrote, you dislike personal notes. I read notes all day at the hospital, I told him, not medical ones. The other kind he wrote, tell me, I did not know why I did it. Perhaps because Declan had not pushed. Perhaps because he understood what it meant to lose the thing people used to define you. His voice had made men fear him. My hearing had given people permission to dismiss me. I showed him the photograph I kept in my coat pocket. The note Eli had written before he walked out of our apartment. He read every line. I watched his jaw tighten when he reached the line about being tired of adjusting around my hearing. He returned the photograph and wrote slowly. He did not leave because loving you was difficult. He left because he was too weak to carry as half of the life you built. I read the words twice. You didn't know him, Declan wrote. I know men who call selfishness freedom. Are you one of those men? He held my gaze before writing. I have been, he paused. I am trying to recognize the difference. No one had ever returned the shame to the person who deserved it. People told me I was brave. They told me I had survived. They told me I deserved better. Declan was the first person who looked at what Eli had done and refused to make my strength the center of the story. At home, Vera's disappearance remained a wall I could not climb. Her bank account had not been emptied. The last 3 withdrawals had been for groceries and a single refill of her prescription. Her car was found at the Harbor Ferry terminal. But the security footage showed only her parking it and walking toward the dock. Her husband was not visible. The police opened a missing person case after I showed them the ring and explained the black car Theo had seen. Still, the farewell note made everything legally unclear. They may have left willingly and separated afterward. The officer said, "We will need evidence of a crime." I wanted to ask whether fear counted as evidence when 2 children could see it. I came home and found Theo sitting at the kitchen table, shoes still on. Did you find them? He asked. Not yet. Do you think they are dead? No. The certainty was a present I could not prove. How do you know? Because I know Vera. Theo looked at the note. Did you know she was going to leave? No, then maybe we don't know her. He was right. It hurt more because he was a child. A childcare emergency forced me to bring June and Theo to Ashford Private one afternoon. They waited in a quiet family lounge while I attended Declan's consultation. When the meeting ended, Declan passed the lounge in a wheelchair. June stared at the whiteboard resting on his lap. Declan noticed and gestured for Eli to stop. June stepped behind my leg. This is Mr. Ashford, I said. He was in the accident. The man you saved. Yes. She studied his bruised throat. Can you not talk? Declan shook his head. Never. He lifted one shoulder and immediately winced. June frowned as though she personally disapproved of his pain. She pulled paper from her coloring book and began drawing. Theo stayed near the wall, watching Declan carefully. Are you a bad man? He asked. Eli looked alarmed. Theo? Declan raised a hand, stopping me. He took the marker and wrote. I have done bad things. Theo, read it. My cousin looked back at me. People can make better choices. I told him, Declan wrote. Your cousin sounds demanding. He is, Theo said. June brought Declan her drawing. It showed a tall man sitting in a chair beside a woman holding a medical bag. Above Declan's head was an empty speech bubble. He studied it, then wrote inside the bubble. Thank you for visiting me, young lady. She smiled. You have nice handwriting. Eli turned his face away. But I saw his shoulders shake with a quiet laugh. Theo looked at the picture and asked, do people leave because they stop loving you? The question changed the weight in the room. I opened my mouth, but Declan was already writing. Sometimes people leave because they are selfish. Sometimes they leave because they are afraid. Neither reason means you are not worth someone staying. Theo read the sentence twice. Which reason did my aunt have? Declan looked at me. I shook my head because I did not know, he wrote. You deserve the truth before anyone is allowed to ask you to forgive them. Theo nodded slowly. Declan did not promise that my aunt would return. He did not try to become a hero inside a 16-year-old's grief. He gave him the truth he could offer. That was the first moment I realized I was beginning to trust him. Cassius Merrick entered our story 3 days later. I knew his name long before I saw his face. Vera had worked for Cassius Merrick Holdings for 19 years. She ran the personnel files for the company's discreet medical clinics along the harbor. Cassius Merrick appeared in newspaper photographs beside hospital executives and charity boards. Smiling as if kindness belonged to him, he arrived at Ashford Private wearing a pale gray suit and the same practiced smile. The moment he entered Declan's room, Declan's entire body changed. His fingers tightened around the marker. His eyes followed Cassius's every step. Ile moved closer to the bed without being asked. I did not know what history stood between them. But I understood immediately that Cassius was not welcome. Declan, Cassius said warmly, I heard the accident was terrible. Declan wrote something and turned it toward him. You sound almost disappointed. Cassius smiled. I came as a friend. Declan wrote, You have never been one. Cassius's attention shifted toward me. He studied my face for several seconds before speaking. You are Vera Holloway's niece. My stomach tightened. How do you know that? Your aunt kept a family photograph on her office desk. You were standing beside her holding a small girl in a yellow coat. The photograph had been taken 2 years earlier at June's school fair. Vera had loved it. I never knew she kept a copy at work. My aunt is missing, I said. I heard. Cassius's pleasant expression did not shift. He turned slightly away, making it harder for me to read his lips. When did you last see her? Vera left her position without notice. She had become confused about several patient files. Perhaps she explained something to you that you misunderstood. I understand that happens with your hearing. A young woman stepped up to the door, a new hire, also with no nursing license. I quickly saw they were pushing me out. She came in, made a slow circle of my chart cart. I'm clearing the room, if I haven't died. Neither have you, I said. Get out. The insult had been delivered so politely that everyone else in the room could pretend it was concern. A nurse near the doorway looked down. One of the doctors pretended to study his chart. I felt the old humiliation rise inside me, the same feeling I had when coworkers spoke behind my back. The same feeling I had when Eli said I never listened. Declan reached for his tablet. Its mechanical voice broke the quiet. Face her when you speak. Cassius looked at him. Excuse me, Declan typed again, if you want to discuss her hearing. Stand where she can see you. Cassius slowly turned until he faced me directly. Declan continued typing. She has earned more respect in a hospital corridor than you could buy with every brick carrying your name. No one moved. Cassius's smile thinned. You have made a powerful friend, Miss Holloway. I helped an injured man. That is all. Declan looked at me. But I could not read the expression in his eyes. Cassius stepped closer. Your aunt believed her actions were simple too. What does that mean? It means that confidential personnel files do not belong to her. Eli moved between us. The visit is over. Cassius adjusted one cuff and looked at Declan. Perhaps when your voice returns. We can discuss the shipment you refused. Declan wrote one word, leave. Cassius departed without another glance at me. The moment the door closed, I turned toward Eli. What shipment was he talking about? Eli looked at Declan before answering. Cassius wanted to move sealed cargo through Declan's shipping line. Why did Declan refuse? Declan wrote. The paperwork was false. He refused an inspection. I looked toward the closed door and then back toward Declan. And his car crashed. Eli's expression hardened. The mechanic found damage to the brake line. It was not an accident, Vera's fear, the black car outside our house. Cassius, recognizing my face and the personnel files he had mentioned, suddenly felt like pieces of the same terrible picture. My aunt found something inside his company, I said. And Cassius knows exactly who her family is. Declan wrote, It is possible. Possible. I turned toward him. He just implicated my aunt in a missing patient case. Declan wrote again. We still need proof of what she found. Then help me find it. His hand stopped above the board. Eli said, You should not confront Cassius or contact his company. He already knows where you work and who your children are. He saw a photograph from my aunt's desk. That is why you should be careful. Careful did not keep Vera from disappearing. Declan wrote, Do not go near him alone. You are in a medical bed and cannot speak. The words came out harsher than I meant them. Declan's expression closed. Regret came immediately. But I did not know how to take the words back without making it worse. He looked down and wrote slowly, I am not asking you to depend on me. I am asking you not to underestimate him. Men have underestimated me my whole life, I said. Declan wrote. Then you know exactly how dangerous that mistake can be. I had no answer, at home that night. I spread the guardianship papers, Vera's wedding ring, and the farewell note across the kitchen table. June slept upstairs. Theo sat beside me pretending to work on a math worksheet. Did you find out anything? he asked. Aunt Vera's employer knew she was gone. Did he know why? He said she was confused. Theo frowned. Grandma was not confused, I know, she was scared. I looked at him. How do you know? She checked the windows every night. She told me that if anyone asked about her work, I should say I didn't know anything. I picked up one of the battery boxes my aunt had left, 6 months of batteries. My name was written on each box in her precise handwriting. People who plan to forget their children do not prepare for their needs months into the future. Declan's words returned to me. Sometimes people leave because they are selfish. Sometimes because they are afraid. I opened the first battery box, nothing unusual. The second contained only batteries. The third felt slightly heavier than the others. I shook it and heard a soft click beneath the plastic tray. My hands began to tremble. I removed the batteries and lifted the tray. A small memory card had been taped beneath it. I inserted it into my laptop. Folders appeared across the screen. Personnel files, patient rosters, photographs of clinic doors with Cassius Merrick's name embossed on each one. Shipping manifests connecting medical cargo to unmarked harbor warehouses. At the bottom was a video file labeled simply for Marin. I stared at it for several seconds. Every important person in my life had used written words to leave me. Eli had left a note beside guardianship papers. Vera had left a note beside guardianship documents. I did not know whether I could survive another farewell message. Then I looked toward the staircase where Theo had finally gone to bed in his shoes. I clicked the file. Vera appeared on the screen. She was sitting close to the camera, facing it directly so I could read every movement of her lips. Her eyes were swollen from crying. Her husband sat beside her with one arm wrapped tightly around her shoulders beneath the desk. They looked exhausted, frightened. Nothing like two people preparing to begin a carefree new life. Vera swallowed before continuing. Maren, she said, we did not leave you. We did not leave the children. The first sentence stole the air from my lungs. My uncle faced the camera. Cassius Merrick's clinics were buying scheduled medication for patients who never received it. The actual drugs were being diverted. Some were sold on the black market. Some were being modified and resold under different labels to overseas buyers. We found patient rosters for people on cancer drugs who died after receiving diluted or expired substitutes. Images flashed through my mind. Elderly patients, young patients, families trusting clinics to give their loved ones one more month, Vera continued. I copied the files because I thought I could bring them to the federal investigators myself. Cassius found out before I could, my uncle added. We believe that if we disappeared on our own, they would stop watching us. They had already placed people inside the clinic offices. They had already started following June. Vera wiped her face. They showed us photographs of June leaving St. Adrian's in her school uniform. Photographs of Theo walking home from track practice. We knew that if any of those files reached a prosecutor, the first response would be retaliation toward the people we love, Vera said. They told us to leave a farewell note that made you certain we had chosen to go. We were told what to write. The words I wrote about being tired of taking care of everyone else were their words. They were the words they believed would make you stop searching. Even though the recording could not answer. My uncle's face seemed to break. We knew, he said. We made the person who loved us most believe she had been abandoned a second time. Vera closed her eyes briefly. We cannot use our old phones or contact anyone connected to Cassius's clinics. We are trying to reach an independent federal investigator through a former patient. If we succeed, we will come home. If we do not, the files on this card must reach someone who cannot be bought. Vera leaned closer, Marin. The words in our note were not true. You have never been difficult to love. You have never been a burden. You have not been passed down because you are too much for anyone to hold. You have not been left because you are not worth staying for. Tears blurred the screen. I removed my hearing aids because their faint hum had suddenly become unbearable. The room fell into a soft, uneven quiet. I could still see my aunt's lips moving. My uncle said, We wanted Cassius to believe that you hated us enough to let us disappear. We thought a broken heart was safer than a target on your back. Vera whispered, We were wrong to choose for you. Please keep the children safe. Do not come looking for us. The video ended. The screen went black, leaving only my reflection. I sat there for a long time. Anger came first, hot, sharp. Almost easier than grief. They had lied to me. They had used the wound Eli left behind because they knew exactly how deeply it would cut. They had looked at my worst fear and decided it was the safest weapon they could use. Then relief came. It hurt even more. Vera had not stopped loving us. She had not left because Theo was difficult, or because I had failed her as the niece she had raised. Somewhere in the city, my aunt and my uncle were frightened. Possibly in danger. Still trying to protect us. I put my hearing aids back in and replayed the video. Then I watched it a third time, on the third viewing. I stopped trying to read the names of the patient files and watched Vera's face. She was not wearing her wedding ring. She had left it for me because she did not know whether she would ever wear it again. I began crying so hard that I did not notice Theo enter the kitchen. I only realized he was there when his hand touched my shoulder. "Was that Grandma?" he asked. I wiped my face. "Yes. Are they alive?" They were when they made the recording. "Did they leave because of me?" "No," I told him. "Did they leave because of you?" "No." "Then why?" I pulled him into the chair beside me and played the first part of the recording. I stopped before the details about patient deaths and Cassius's threat. Theo watched Vera say they had not abandoned us. His face did not move until she said his name. Then his shoulders began to shake. "She lied to me," he whispered. "Yes. She told me I was difficult to handle. She said it because she was trying to make someone dangerous believe we were no longer a family. But I believed her, so did I. Does that make it okay?" I looked at him. He deserved more than the easy answer we usually give children, "No." Loving someone does not make every way you hurt them acceptable. "Do you forgive them?" "I don't know yet. Do I have to?" "No." He leaned against me. "Can we still want her home?" "Yes." We sat together until June came downstairs carrying her blanket. She climbed into my lap without asking what was wrong. For once, I let both children see me cry. I did not tell them I was fine. The next morning, I called in sick to St. Adrian's. It was the first time I had missed an entire shift without being physically unable to stand. My supervisor sounded concerned about the schedule. My coworker sent a message reminding me that other people had responsibilities too. I deleted it. I then called Eli. He answered on the second ring. "Marin, I found something. I think Vera was not allowed to come home." His tone changed. "What?" "I have personnel files, clinic patient rosters, Cassius Merrick's name on every shipping manifest, and a video. Do not send anything electronically." He said, "I wasn't planning to. Where are you home?" "Stay there, Eli. Do not send armed men to my house." He paused. "I was going to send one car. No, if those files are what I think they are. I will bring a copy to Ashford Private. That is not safe. Neither is giving strangers the address of the two children. My aunt told me to keep away from any of this." I ended the call before he could argue. I copied the files onto 2 drives. One went into my medical bag. I taped the second beneath the drawer where Vera had kept her wedding ring. Then I arranged for Mrs. Patel to sit with June and Theo. Then I arranged for Mrs. Patel to sit with June and Theo. Theo did not want me to leave. "You promised not to disappear." "I am telling you exactly where I'm going." "What if you don't come back? Then Eli will call this number." I wrote it down for him, and if he does not call, you call the police and show them the video. His face went pale. Is it that dangerous? I wanted to protect him from the truth. My aunt had tried the same thing. "It could be," I said. "That is exactly why I'm making a plan instead of pretending nothing is wrong." Theo nodded slowly. "Come back, I will do everything I can." Declan was in a speech therapy room when I reached Ashford Private. He stood between parallel bars, one hand resting on the rail while a therapist demonstrated breathing exercises. His shoulder remained stiff, but the bruising along his throat had faded from black to yellow. He saw my face through the glass and immediately raised one hand. The therapist stopped. Declan pointed toward the door. A minute later, Eli brought me inside. Declan reached for his whiteboard. "What happened?" I placed the memory card on the table. My aunt did not abandon us, I told him. She found evidence against a man she worked for and made us believe she was leaving because they threatened the children. Declan's eyes moved to the card, then back to me. They were not allowed to come home. I don't know where they are. He looked toward Eli. Eli picked up the card. I will have the files copied without connecting them to a network. No one removes pages, I said. No one decides which parts matter. Understood. Eli left with the card. Declan studied me. His whiteboard stayed empty for several seconds. Then he wrote, "Sit. I am fine." He looked at me in a way that made the lie feel embarrassing. I sat in the chair beside the therapy table. Declan wrote, "Tell me." I wanted to say there was nothing to tell. Instead, I told him everything. The threats, the photographs of June and Theo, the substituted medication, the cruel farewell note written to keep me from searching. I told him my aunt had used the same words Eli had used because she knew those words would make me stop believing I was wanted. Eli left because he wanted freedom, I said. Vera left because she wanted to protect me. Different reasons, same empty room. Declan lifted the marker. Do not tell me I am strong. I added. His hand stopped. He erased the first word he had written and turned the board toward me. I wasn't going to, then what were you going to write? He wrote slowly. You're tired, you're hurt. And you are allowed to need someone without having to earn the right to ask. I stared at the words until they blurred. I don't know how. Declan placed the board on the tray. He raised his hand toward me, then stopped before touching my face, even without a voice. He asked the question clearly. May I? I nodded. His fingers touched my cheek, gentle, warm. Nothing like the cold authority that everyone else associated with his name. Something inside me gave way. I covered my face and cried. Declan did not tell me to calm down. He did not say my aunt meant well. He did not say that everything would be all right. He simply remained in front of me, his hand resting against my cheek, allowing me to be tired and hurt without demanding I turn either feeling into strength. When I finally straightened up, the shame made me lean away. I should go. Declan's hand tightened around the edge of the table. He tried to speak. At first, only air came out. I stepped toward him instinctively. Don't force it, he tried again. His throat moved with visible pain. Stop. The sound was rough, almost more breath than word. I froze. Declan closed his eyes, gathered another breath, and said, Marin. It was the first time I had heard his voice, damaged, low, uneven, but real. My name sounded like something he had fought to bring back from a place no doctor could reach. You spoke, I whispered. He swallowed painfully. The second word failed. I stepped closer. Stop. You will hurt yourself. Declan shook his head. His eyes stayed on mine. He tried again. I'm here, 2 words, not an order, not a warning. Not the name of an enemy. Not a demand for control. His first sentence after the accident was a promise he had never been asked to make. I touched his face. Don't say things you cannot keep. Declan's hand covered mine. Here, he repeated. Quieter. I kissed him. I did not plan it. I did not think about his name, his history, or the weight that came with it. I closed the small distance between us because for the first time in years, someone had seen me breaking and chosen not to walk away. Declan was still for half a second, giving me the space to change my mind when I did not. His hand moved carefully behind my neck. The kiss was slow, patient, as if he understood that anything too urgent might frighten me back into the life where I handled everything alone. When we separated, his forehead rested against mine. That cannot be good for your throat, I said. The corner of his mouth lifted. He reached for the board and wrote, Worth it. I laughed through the last of my tears. Eli returned before I could decide whether I was embarrassed. His gaze moved from Declan's face to mine, then to the whiteboard. Did I interrupt something? Declan wrote, Yes. Eli looked at the card. The files are real. The shipment codes match the cargo Cassius tried to push through Declan's ports. What about the patient files? We need a medical professional to verify them. Eli shook his head. You are too close to this. I am the only person here who understands what diluted medication does to a patient over 6 months. Declan picked up the board. She verifies the medical files. Eli, read it. You are not objective either. Declan wrote, I am not claiming that. I looked between them. We do this legally. No threats. No men disappearing. No using the evidence to negotiate with Cassius. Eli's expression told me I had removed every option he preferred. We need someone outside the city, I said. Someone Cassius cannot pressure through hospital contracts or clinic influence. Eli nodded reluctantly. I know a federal contact who worked on pharmaceutical fraud 2 years ago. The files go to that person only after copies have been protected. Agreed. Declan wrote, Marin decides what happens to her aunt's recording. I looked at him. He had power I did not understand. Connections I could not fully trust. But he had returned the decision to me without being asked. The private family parts stay private, I said. The evidence and my aunt's explanation go to the investigators. Eli left to make the arrangements over the next week. Declan's voice returned in fragments, a word in therapy. A rough sentence after several breaths. Speaking caused pain. So most of our conversations remained on the board. I learned to recognize the exact moment he was tired because his handwriting tilted to the left. He learned that I sometimes reached for my hearing aids when I needed the world to stop asking things from me. Neither of us tried to fix the other. Declan's speech therapist wanted him to practice neutral phrases. He chose ones that annoyed Eli. Sit down, not now, Marin is right. The last one became his favorite. One returned to St. Adrian's while the files were being reviewed. 2 days later, an elderly patient arrived from one of Cassius Merrick's clinics with dangerously high blood sugar and signs that his insulin had failed. The staff assumed he had skipped his evening dose. His chart showed every dose had been administered. I examined the vial sent with his belongings. A batch number had been printed near the bottom. I had seen the same number in my aunt's files. I asked the senior doctor to hold the medication. My coworker sighed loudly. Not everything is a conspiracy. Marin, I did not say it was. You have been distracted for weeks. The vial is still wrong, I said. Based on what? The batch record lists a different concentration than the label. You turned away while speaking. Face me. She looked back at me. I moved in front of her so my better ear was facing her. Face me if you are accusing me of making a mistake. The senior doctor entered before she could answer. I showed him the vial and the copied record. He listened without interrupting. He ordered the medication tested and suspended every product from the same batch. The results came back that evening. The drug contained less than 1/5 of the active ingredient printed on the label. The patient had not failed his medication had failed him. St. Adrian suspended every product connected to Cassius Merrick's distribution company. Other hospitals began testing their own stock. More diluted medications were discovered. The senior doctor called an emergency meeting. This time, when he praised my work, no one could call it sympathy. Marin did not misunderstand the label, he said, looking directly at the coworker who had challenged me. She noticed what the rest of us failed to question. Our patients are safer because she refused to be embarrassed into silence. My coworker approached me afterward. I didn't know the medication was fake. Neither did I until I checked. You could have reported that I dismissed your concerns. I still can. Her face changed. I let the silence last long enough for her to understand. I didn't protect you, I said. I protected the patient. Do not confuse the two. It was the first time I had refused to make someone else comfortable after they had hurt me. The investigation became public within days. News reports connected Cassius Merrick's clinics to medication shortages and suspicious deaths of patients with diabetes, asthma and cancer. My aunt's name was not released. But my role at St. Adrian's appeared in one article. A photograph showed me leaving the hospital beside Eli. That was enough to bring Eli back. He appeared outside my house on a gray afternoon, wearing a coat I had never seen, and the expression of a man arriving to collect something he believed had waited for him. I saw him through the window before he knocked. For a moment I was back at my kitchen table 6 years earlier, holding a farewell note while June cried in the next room. Then I looked at my daughter drawing on the living room floor and remembered we had survived him. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "I saw the news." "That does not answer the question. You are involved with Declan Ashford." His tone made the name sound dirty, though he had borrowed money from men far less powerful and far less careful. "My work is connected to an investigation. June should not be around people like that." "You have not asked about June in 11 months. I'm her father." "You signed away custody and left a note explaining why fatherhood was interfering with your freedom." He lowered his voice. "I made a mistake, you made a plan. You found a lawyer, you signed the papers. You packed your clothes and left while I was on shift. That was not one mistake. The woman I was with is gone." At least he was honest about the reason for his return, and now you remember your daughter. "We were a family, Marin. June and I were a family. You were only living in our house until the responsibility became uncomfortable." His face hardened. "You think Ashford will stay? A man like that does not build a life with a deaf nurse and someone else's child." "Child?" The sentence landed where he intended. It did not stay there. Declan's written words came back to me. "He left because he was too weak to carry his half of the life you built." "You spent 6 years convincing me that my hearing made me difficult to love," I told him. "It took one honest man with no voice to show me that the problem was never my ears, it was your character." "An honest man," he laughed. "He's a criminal. And you are standing outside the home of the child you abandoned, using concern as an excuse to see whether my life became valuable after you left." The front door opened. Declan stood inside the hallway with Eli several steps behind him. He had come for a scheduled conversation about the investigation. He arrived while my ex was still on the porch. Declan did not step between us. He did not threaten him. He stayed where I could see him and allowed me to finish. "My ex noticed him and lost some of his color. Is he living here? None of your business. I will petition for custody. You can speak to my lawyer. You will not use June as a way back into a life you threw away." He looked past me toward the house. "I want to see her when she is ready. And after a family counselor agrees, not because your girlfriend left. Not because you saw my name in the news, Marin. You told me not to contact you. I respected it for 3 years. Now respect mine, leave." He stood there for another moment, perhaps waiting for Declan to make the decision for me. Declan stayed silent. My ex finally walked away. I went inside and closed the door. My hands began shaking only after the lock clicked. Declan stood in front of me on the side where I heard him more clearly. His voice was still rough. "Did you say what you wanted?" he asked. I nodded. For the first time he held out his hand. I took it. He did not tell me he was proud of me as if I were a child. He did not offer to handle anything. He simply held my hand while my body finished remembering that I was safe. Cassius Merrick's emergency licensing hearing was scheduled 3 weeks later. The state health board planned to decide whether his clinics and distribution companies could continue operating while the federal case moved forward. The hearing would be public. Families of patients filled the benches. Reporters waited near the doors. Hospital representatives sat on one side. Cassius entered with his attorneys and the same calm smile he had worn in Declan's room. He looked almost offended that anyone had questioned his kindness. I testified first. I explained how the batch numbers connected my aunt's files to the diluted medication found at St. Adrian's. Cassius's attorney asked whether my hearing had ever caused a communication error at work. "Everyone makes communication errors," I said. "That is exactly why trained professionals verify their information. That is why they do not use a disability as an excuse to ignore the evidence." He asked whether my aunt's disappearance had made me emotionally unstable. It made me terrified. It did not change the chemical content of the medicine. A few people in the room murmured. Cassius watched me without smiling. Then Declan was called. He walked slowly to the witness table. He no longer needed a wheelchair. But one shoulder remained stiff and a thin scar crossed his throat. The room went quiet when people recognized him. Cassius's attorney stood. "Mr. Ashford, we are being asked to rely on the testimony of a man whose own business record is a matter of investigation." Declan adjusted the microphone. His voice came out rough but clear. You should rely on the records. The attorney looked at the commission chair. Mr. Ashford's ability to communicate is clearly limited. Cassius leaned toward his attorney and whispered, then spoke loud enough for the room to hear. The central accusation comes from a partially deaf nurse and a man who can barely speak. I felt Declan's hand close around mine beneath the table. Not to silence me, to remind me we were both there. You do not have to force your voice. I whispered to him. Declan shook his head. You have carried enough for other people. He opened the shipping ledgers for the next 20 minutes. Declan described how Cassius's cargo had moved through companies under Ashford ownership. Each sentence cost him. His voice weakened. Then returned after water and silence. No one rushed him. No one spoke over him. When the attorney tried to redirect a question toward Eli, the chair said Mr. Ashford is capable of answering for himself. I saw Declan absorb the words at last. The chair asked why he had brought records that also implicated him. Declan looked toward the families seated behind us. I spent most of my life believing power meant no one could make me answer for anything. He paused. One hand touched his throat. Marin Holloway stopped for a man she did not know, he said. She asked for nothing. Her aunt risked her life for people whose names she never learned. I cannot claim ignorance as innocence when I chose not to ask what moved through my own ports. He turned toward Cassius. He counted on no one listening to the families. He counted on people dismissing her because she could not always hear clearly. He counted on my silence because the truth would cost me everything. Declan looked directly at the commission. He was wrong. Federal investigators entered the room before the hearing ended. Cassius did not shout or run. He simply lost the expression he had worn for years. His attorneys surrounded him as officers, took control of the evidence and told him he was being detained in connection with medical fraud, conspiracy, witness intimidation, and patient deaths. He looked at me while they led him away. Your aunt caused this. No, I answered, you did. Declan's businesses began collapsing before we left the building. Accounts were frozen. Port contracts were suspended. Men who had once called him boss stopped returning eyes calls. News outlets described him as both witness and criminal. He had destroyed Cassius, but he had also opened every locked door in his own life. 3 days later, my aunt and uncle came home. They had reached federal investigators before Cassius's people found them. They had been held in protective custody while the evidence was verified. A government vehicle stopped outside our house just after noon. June ran to the window. Theo stayed in the hallway with his shoes on. My aunt stepped out first. She looked thinner. My uncle followed, moving carefully as if he had aged years in a few weeks. My aunt saw us through the glass and covered her mouth. June opened the door before I could stop her. She ran across the porch and threw herself into her grandmother's arms. Theo did not move. My uncle entered slowly. Theo, he said. My cousin's face hardened. Why didn't you take me? My aunt knelt in front of him because we were afraid the people following us would hurt you. You told me I was difficult. Her face crumpled. I said the cruelest thing I could think of because I wanted anyone listening to believe we did not care. But I was listening. I slept in my shoes. My uncle turned away crying openly. My aunt reached toward Theo, but he stepped behind me. You don't have to hug them, I told him, not until you want to. My aunt lowered her hands. I won't push you. I took the wedding ring from my pocket. I had carried it in every place after. I held it out to her. She did not take it immediately. Do you hate us? She asked. No. No. Can you forgive us? Not all at once, my uncle answered. We will wait. You tried to save our lives, I said. You also broke our trust to do it. Both things are true. We thought protecting you meant making the decision ourselves. He said, we knew you would follow us. Yes, you were probably right. That does not make what we did fair. I placed the ring in her hand. Theo stays with me until he asks for something different. You will not pressure him. You will not expect the video to erase the note. We understand, she whispered. And if you are frightened again, you will tell me. You will not decide that destroying my heart is safer than trusting me. My uncle looked directly at me. We promise. I almost told him that promises were not enough. Then Theo spoke from behind me. Grandma, can you make the red lentil stew tomorrow? My uncle began crying harder. If you want me to. I didn't say I forgive you. I know, I just miss your lentil stew. I miss making it. Reconciliation did not happen in one embrace. It happened in pieces. My aunt and uncle rented an apartment nearby instead of moving directly back into our house. They attended counseling with Theo. They sat with June while she drew and answered every question honestly. Some days Theo hugged them. Other days he refused to speak. They accepted both. Declan's world became smaller at the same time mine began to rebuild. Federal prosecutors allowed him to remain free while cooperating. But he surrendered control of the ports, closed the illegal arms operations, and accepted restrictions that would have once felt impossible to him. People who had feared his name started speaking about him as if he were already gone. Eli stayed, I stayed too. Declan did not understand why. One evening, I found him alone in the office where the shipping ledgers had once been kept. The shelves were empty. Boxes covered the floor. He stood at the window, looking toward the harbor that no longer belonged to him. "You should be home," he said. His voice was still rough. "Especially when he was tired, so should you?" "This is still my office for another week. Then we are both where we should be." He turned to face me. He had learned never to begin an important conversation while I was looking away. "I think you should walk away from me." The words hurt, not in the way my ex's note had. Declan was standing right in front of me. He was giving me the truth even though he believed it would cost him. "Is that what you want?" I asked. "It is what I think is safer." That was not my question. He looked toward the empty shelves. "I don't know what I have to offer you. The money is mostly gone. The name will bring court cases, reporters, and people who blame me for things I did and things I allowed. I know June deserves stability. I know Theo has been abandoned enough. I know you deserve a life that is not built around another damaged man." "My ex left a note because he wanted an easier life," I said. "My aunt left a note because she wanted to protect me. Don't become the third person who decides my future while calling it love." Declan's jaw tightened. "I'm trying not to trap you." "Then don't push me away either. Ask me." He stepped closer, careful to stay in front of me. "What do you choose, you?" He closed his eyes briefly. "Maren, not the ports, not the money, not the name people fear, you. You, not the ports, not the money. Not the ports, not the money. Not the name people fear, you." I don't know who I am without the power. I touched the scar on his throat. "You were the man who thanked a 7-year-old by writing inside a speech bubble. You were the man who answered a 16-year-old honestly when everyone else offered him promises. You were the man who let me speak without speaking over me. You were Declan before you were anyone's boss." His eyes shone. "Are you sure?" "For the first time in my life, the choice is mine." I placed my hand against his chest. "Yes." Declan kissed me with the same patience he had shown the first time. No urgency, no claim. Just a man who had lost the world that feared him and discovered that one woman still saw something worth choosing. A year later, St. Adrian's promoted me to Patient Safety Coordinator. My job was to review medication failures, improve communication access, and teach the medical teams that asking someone to repeat themselves was not an inconvenience. It was an obligation. The coworker who once called my earlier promotion sympathy attended my first training session. When I asked whether anyone had questions, she raised her hand and waited until I faced her before speaking. It was not an apology. It was a beginning. My aunt and uncle continued earning their way back into our lives. Theo stopped sleeping in his shoes 6 months after they returned. One night, I passed his room and saw them neatly placed beside the bed. I stood in the hallway and cried quietly. This time from relief, June grew used to Declan's rough voice. She corrected anyone who interrupted him. He never tried to replace the father she lost. He simply arrived when he said he would, attended school plays, learned how to braid her hair badly, and listened to every story she told as if nothing else in the room mattered. Declan rebuilt 2 legitimate companies from what remained of his former empire. The offices were smaller. The cars were ordinary. Eli complained constantly and stayed anyway. Declan proposed in my kitchen on an evening that looked nothing like the nights when people had left notes on the table. June and Theo were upstairs. My aunt and uncle had gone home. A pot of soup simmered on the stove. Declan stood directly in front of me and took a ring from his pocket. No letter, no messenger, no decision made in my absence. "Will you choose a life with me?" he asked. His voice was still rough, but every word reached me clearly. "Only if you always face me when you speak." He smiled. "For the rest of my life, at our wedding?" Declan stood close enough for me to hear his voice and see every word on his lips. June held my flowers. Theo carried the rings. My aunt and uncle sat together in the front row, my aunt wearing her wedding ring again. When it was time for Declan's vows, he took both my hands. "I cannot promise I will always know the right words," he said. "But I promise I will never accuse you of not hearing me until I have first made sure I was standing where you could." I cried before he finished. So did my aunt. Declan smiled and continued. "I promise never to use your strength as permission to leave you alone. I will ask before I protect. I will listen before I decide. And I will stay in the room when the truth is difficult," when it was my turn. I looked at the man I had found unconscious inside an overturned car. The feared boss who had lost his voice, his empire, and the identity he once believed was all he had. "I promise to see the man in front of me," I said, "not the name behind him. I promise to remind you that losing power did not make you less. It gave you the chance to become more." We kissed while June cheered loudly enough for everyone to hear. My ex had left a note because loving me felt like work. Declan stood in front of me and gave me vows because learning how to love me was the first life he had ever freely chosen.